Just one moment. All right, and we're live on YouTube. The meeting is yours, Madam Chair. Let me know if you need anything else.
Thank you. I'd like to call the March 25th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting to order. Please take attendance and don't forget to say where you are physically.
Magro, Kashkarian,
Here, Michigan, Milford.
Davis,
Here, Milford, Michigan.
DeVries,
Here, Milford, Michigan.
Rishka,
Here, Milford, Michigan.
Mizera,
Here in Milford.
Latka,
Here in Milford.
Malin,
Here, Milford.
and Gilo.
Here in Milford.
Okay, thank you. Next is approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes to the agenda as it has been posted?
I'd like to amend the agenda to
Okay.
include the approval of the February 25th minutes of the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion to approve with change?
So move.
Second,
Second.
can we just all say aye or do we have to do roll call?
Who
Aye.
moved?
You have to do roll call, sorry.
Okay,
You're almost always gonna have to do roll call, especially when you're virtual, so.
okay, sounds good. Who gave the motion?
I did.
Okay, Vaughn, and second was Neil, I believe. Was it Neil?
Malin.
Malin,
Malin.
okay. All right, thank you. Roll call, please.
Kashkarian,
Aye.
Malin,
Aye.
Rishka,
Aye.
Gilo,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
DeVries,
Aye.
Mizera,
Aye.
and Latka.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to zoning board of appeals liaison report. Neil.
The last meeting was March 10th. There was an electronic copy of a synopsis sent out today. I'll just go through it briefly. One item on the agenda, V21-001. Location is 1830 North Oaks Drive. It's in an R1R zoning district. Ordinance 32-610 prohibits the open storage and parking of commercial vehicles associated with a home-based business. The applicant was requesting to store and service gravel hauling trucks and trailers on her own property, both in a pole barn and on the outskirts of the pole barn. The appeal was denied.
Okay, thank you, Neil. Township board report, Bill.
On the board, we did introduce the ordinances for the drive-through, the definitions and all of the permitted uses. So that has been introduced and should come up next month for adoption. We then talked a little bit more about the trail. So we have the airline trail at the south end of the township that we're moving towards doing. We did talk about having to work with the DNR to acquire some land from them, which used to be the old railroad track. And we continue to talk, the ongoing talk about putting in a pedestrian crossing signal on General Motors Road at the current recreational trail. That's pretty much it.
Okay, great. Next is on the agenda is public comment. Brian, do we have any public on the line tonight?
Sorry, yes, we do have one caller with their hand raised.
Okay, this
So,
can be anything that is either on the agenda or not on the agenda. And if they could please state their name and address for the record.
Okay, so 9163, you have to press *6 on your keypad to unmute.
Yep, hello.
Yes, we can hear you, caller. State your
Yes,
name and
hi.
address.
Yeah, my name is Dave Thompson. My address is 2797 Wildemere Drive. I just wanted to say a couple things. I know, I help with Citizens for Responsible Growth. We're a citizens group that most of you know. We have over 600 followers on our Facebook page. And first I want to thank the Planning Commission for their continued support of the master plan. We're making major decisions, and they're being made over virtual meetings, which I think limits some public participation, which I think is too bad. As Milford residents, I'm sure you understand the special community that we have here, rural in nature, and can understand and empathize the community's concern with I hate to see it increase in density, and possibly threaten that the spirit of what we love about the community. That's all I had to say.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Brian, is there anyone else?
No other callers at the moment.
Okay. All right, well then next we'll move to the next item is matters for consideration. We have old business, the crossings of Milford. This is, the applicant is asking for an approval of a C2 PUD overlay for mixed use development of commercial and residential. We will go with our applicant. We'll talk first, and then the planners for the township, and then planning commissioners will discuss. So if we're ready, Mr. Curry, would you like to start?
Sure. Thank you. There have not been any material changes to the site layout itself and the plans that were submitted. Most of our changes were informational, which I'll get to. The residential portion of the site remains the same as it's been presented, with 175 units and 18 buildings and a clubhouse with a pool. The commercial area also remains the same, except that based on some discussion in that last meeting in January, we've increased the maximum allowed square footage for the commercial building. The density of the residential development is approximately 6 units per acre, with a lot coverage of 15.6%. For development of this type, and for development in the C2 zoning, this is not a very dense site. I know everybody keeps bringing up density, but when we first met with the township before any submittals a couple of years ago, a couple of things were suggested. One, that there be no hotel use included in this development, and that the residential building shouldn't be more than 2 stories. We followed those suggestions, and in comparison to what was previously approved for the site about 6 years ago, with 250,000 square feet of commercial space, a 4-story hotel, and a much larger percentage of pavement and buildings on the site, this is really a much lower impact development than could be built here. In our response to the letter, our response letter to the Planning Commission comments from January, we've explained the changes we've made to the plans based on those comments. And I'll go over those briefly right now. Some of the comments were regarding the timing of the improvements that keeps coming up. Top course of asphalt was one. As we stated, following the completion of the last residential building, the top course for the entire residential site will be paved. Prior to final C of O for each individual commercial site, each commercial site will be paved as it's developed. We were asked about the timing of road improvements, and the required improvements for the development will be completed with the initial infrastructure of the site, along with all the base utilities, paving, curbing, landscaping that I'll get to in a moment. Sri, if you could bring up the landscape plan, or if you could allow me to share my screen, that would be easier to describe the landscape phasing that way.
You should be able to share your screen.
Can I? Okay, let me. Bear with me. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so Sri had followed up with me with a couple questions on this that it wasn't entirely clear. And part of the problem is that for some reason, the PDF version of this, it's not as clear as in the printed paper version. But I've went and outlined in orange red here the areas that we've built with the initial infrastructure of development before all the buildings go up. And that would include the detention basins, which is actually, I think, required by the drain office that we seed those and stabilize them first right off the bat. We'll be doing the bioswale behind the commercial sites. We'll be doing boulevard entries to the site and all of the landscaping buffer along the frontage on Milford and Pontiac Trail. And then with each grouping of residential buildings, as we described for the order of construction, as each of those groupings of buildings is completed, the landscaping around them will go up. And the reason we can't do some of this perimeter landscaping right off the bat is in order to build those buildings and get equipment around them, it's just not possible without tearing out landscaping as they build. So that will go in once the buildings are up for each group of buildings. While I'm on it, I'll note a couple other things on landscape plan. We did increase the buffer. We have been talking about eliminating the full buffer for the perimeter next to the residential to the north and east. We've gone ahead and shown the full landscape buffer for between C2 and residential uses in those areas. Also provided a couple areas where if there are any mitigation trees required, which isn't anticipated, there's not much in the way of mature trees at all on this site, but there are areas, we're just showing that there are areas available to plant replacement trees if they aren't necessary. A lot of the other questions on the last meeting were regarding the standards for the commercial development area. As we've discussed, what's shown on the plan is purely conceptual. So a lot of the defining that happened there is based on setbacks, things that are allowed and not allowed. And as we've discussed, we've recommended that the planning commission be allowed to allow some variations to lighting, landscaping, and loading requirements as those sites come in for site plan. And that's really the purpose, is to allow a cohesive development so that these aren't looked at as like individual sites all by themselves. They all kind of work together. So there might have to be some lighting changes to where maybe light spills over between one commercial lot to the other. But any of those variations won't be between commercial and residential, just between the commercial uses. So that would be lighting, landscaping, and loading. We've stated that we'll meet the noise requirements for drive-through speakers. We were asked for a maximum number of lots for the commercial. We show 5, but it's possible that you could fit 6. It's not likely, but we've set a maximum at 6 separate units in that commercial development. There was some discussion, as I mentioned before, about concern that this 33,000 square feet we had noted as a maximum was quite a bit below the 100,000 that's typical for commercial in this district. We've raised that maximum to 50,000 square feet. We've noted that shared parking between the units may be allowed, just like it is by the ordinance in other areas. And regarding drive-throughs, we've basically resolved that down to just, we will meet whatever the drive-through standards are in the ordinance at the time each site comes in. We've updated the architectural requirements that we had provided before, specifically noting no neon lights or window lighting, no outlining of the facade with lighting, some information about screening for mechanical equipment on the roof. And just again, reiterating that the style will match the rural character of the township. Another comment that we had received was about some more information about the Plan B, as it was called, layout for water supply. If by chance public water did not become available, we would do a community well, as we'd shown before. We didn't do anything more to do any detailed design of those facilities because it is pretty much a what if scenario at this point. We don't know exactly what that would look like, but we've provided the location of it and committed that we'll meet all landscape and screening requirements for any facilities that are built. And the architecture of any buildings, a well house or what have you, would match the residential buildings. There were some questions about water table concerns and hydrogeology reports. The review process by Eagle at the state is pretty rigorous. Hydrogeological studies would need to be completed in order to even get a well permitted. I think I went over the landscape changes. Those were most of the site-related things aside from traffic. There were a number of traffic comments, and we've continued to get comments back and forth between the township's consultants, and Mike Lebedy and Jill Bauer from Rowe have been working with them and answering questions, going back and forth. We've also talked to the Pulte group a couple times about their plans. And it was recommended a couple meetings ago that we provide traffic simulations for viewing at this meeting. So Mike and Jill will be prepared to show you those and to discuss the traffic study and comments. At this point, I'll turn it over to Mike and Jill.
Thank you. Mike and Jill, are you there?
Here, I'm here. Jill's here too, I'm sure.
Great.
A couple of things that, before we show you the simulations and we talk about it very much, there's really only one item that's really stands out. Otherwise, the improvements that are listed in the report are things that the project's committed to. But the intersection of Pontiac Trail and Milford has been a back and forth learning experience for the consultants. And so I think that in the last couple of weeks, the exchanges have pointed out a couple of things that Jill and I didn't know would be allowed. First thing is that under the existing conditions, so that when you do the traffic study, you have to evaluate how well or how well they're not working, the intersections are not working. So under existing conditions, there's an opportunity to change the traffic signal timing at that intersection to provide a much better level of service, but more importantly, significantly reduce queues that we did not identify in our original study because we didn't think Road Commission would like that. But according to Giffords Webster, they do like that and they're okay with it. So if you were to implement those timing changes, you get quite a different answer for the existing condition at that intersection, particularly for the westbound left turn in the PM peak hour, which is where in our original study, we felt under existing conditions, we needed to revise the signal, but we also needed to add a second westbound left turn lane. Well, that's changed now. And with the traffic signal timing changes that are that were brought up by Mo and the Road Commission, things are quite a bit different. And Jill has a simulation she can show you for that. With that same improvement in the traffic signal timing, it changes the future conditions results as well. So instead of a dual left turn, we found that we can extend the existing center lane for left turns at that intersection and accomplish the same thing, if not better, without having to have a dual left turn. So one more thing that I think is important to know, and that is that in the PM peak hour, when it's most difficult for that left turn movement, because many people are coming from the east, making a left turn, going on the freeway, so they're coming from along Pontiac Trail. The number of left turns that we are adding to right now, there are 540 some people making a left turn during that PM peak hour. Our development is going to add 50 to that. Okay, during that peak hour. But if we do that, we can allow, we can basically have better queues and we can have a direct left into our site, but it requires widening of the intersection a little bit down to our driveway to accommodate another extended center lane for left turns. one other thing that everybody, we've alluded to a lot, but we never quantified it. If you were to, and I know everybody's said this, but we compared it. If you were to build the approved project that Kajolian had a couple of years ago, that project would generate 4,300 more trips per day than this proposed development. So that's a pretty significant difference, just so you know. Jill, would you like to show the simulations and maybe explain them to everybody too? You're muted.
Sorry, I was moving the dogs in the background. All right.
It's fun to have that problem.
Yeah. All right. Can everyone see the screen?
I can. I assume everybody else can.
I don't know if it's just taking a minute to load or not.
Well, while you're looking at it and waiting for it to load, and this intersection north is to the right.
Yeah, so in the layout, we kind of turned everything. We wanted to focus on the main intersections here, which is, you know, your ramps to I-86, and then also the intersection at Pontiac Trail and Milford Road.
Jill,
So,
can I interrupt real quick?
yes.
When I'm looking at it, portions of that intersection, the important intersection, are covered by everybody's video faces. Is there a way to move this to the left a little bit?
I think everyone can, you can actually, Mike, you can be able to move the videos on your screen. You can move the faces off of the video.
Okay, so I'm the only one that doesn't know that?
If you hover on the box at the top right, there's a little tiny to the far left of it, a little tiny single line. That'll
Yep.
take it down really small, and then it'll be easy to find later.
Well, as long as you guys can see it. I've seen it 100 times already. I just want to make sure everyone else can see it. So if you can, good. I'm good.
Okay. All right. So the first video here is just showing the existing conditions during the AM peak hour. We just did some 30-second snapshots of the simulation to kind of keep this simple tonight. We definitely can be able to share the much longer simulation with the township. So, but you can see AM peak hour, the biggest concern we had when we were kind of looking at this is this off-bound ramp for westbound I-96. But otherwise, for the most part, the AM peak hour, things are moving rather smoothly. So I'll move on to the PM peak hour. And you can see, I know there's the stacking, the queuing that we have for the westbound left turns. They block vehicles that are trying to get through to go right, to go north on Milford Road at Pontiac Trail. There's stacking for the northbound left turns to get onto I-96 westbound. So the PM peak hour is kind of, oops, and that skipped ahead. Back one. So these are a couple areas that we kind of noted in our report. We went through and based on comments that we received back from Giffords Webster, we made some adjustments to the signal timing. During the AM peak hour, it wasn't a significant difference when we updated any of the timings. Things are still, you can see a little bit of queuing here, but nothing significant that doesn't kind of run itself through the cycle when it goes. So we didn't have any additional AM peak hour from the existing recommendations. And then go on. And then in the existing PM, when we made the improvements to the timing, you can see from before the stacking or the queue dissipates through the cycle. So you don't have the queuing that you were seeing before with that changed signal timing. So that led us to go back and, like Mike had mentioned, look at just extending that left turn lane. So this is the AM peak hour with your extended left turn lane. You can see the left turn lane coming into our site. The signal that we had recommended in the background improvements, and it's something that we know now. This is kind of on MDOT's radar to signalize this ramp. So, but with that, we don't see any queuing that's causing any type of queuing past our driveway during the AM peak hour. And then this switches to the future PM peak hour with that same improvement of just the single left turn lane that's extended. And you can see here that there's some queuing, but once again, just like it was doing in the existing conditions, it's dissipating through that cycle. So
But that movement only has 50 more cars in it.
yeah, so that's why we kind of wanted to go back and take a look at that. So this is our updated simulation for comparison to what was going on in the existing conditions. So, all right. I guess, Mike, did you have anything else to add there?
No, I don't think so. Just to understand that the difference between the report and what we found out in the last couple of weeks is the traffic signal timing at the intersection. There changes can be made there that we didn't think the road commission would accept. So once we made those, it did make quite a difference. It'd be great if they'd go out there and put them in there now, but nonetheless, we have that our development generates 50 more trips for that movement, and our recommendation in a revised report is going to be to extend the left turn lane versus build another one along with the same timing changes. So if anybody has any questions, be happy to answer them if we can.
Hi, this is Bill Mazzara.
Hi, Bill.
And I had a couple of questions.
Sure.
One of the original requests that we made was to show the traffic situation the way it exists today, with all of its problems that it has, and then to show what happens when the new traffic comes online. The other was to understand that some of these conditions, as indicated in earlier presentations, are going to be compensated by the applicant. The other ones they were looking to have either Oakland County or MDOT do the changes. So I would like to get a better understanding of what does the traffic look like if MDOT and the Road Commission do not do their changes, and only the ones that were projected by the applicant. Can you demonstrate that, please?
Well, you could show, you can see that on the simulations that we have. If you wanted to show those again, Joe, you can do that.
That's just to point it out a little bit.
You're still muted, Joe.
I know, I'm trying to get my screen shared. Okay, so go back. So essentially, if this, right now, the way we're looking at it for as far as anything that RCOC, we no longer, like Mike mentioned, since we're not looking at a dual left as any type of a background improvement or an existing improvement, it is now what we're looking at is extending this left turn lane and considering that a future improvement when the development goes in. Because of that, there's nothing in here that's for the Road Commission anymore. Essentially, this ramp right here, if it's not signalized, it will not look better than it looks currently. I know, actually, I can share that. We have a photo taken, or really a snapshot when we did all of our traffic counts for this project. The camera for that was on this eastbound off ramp, kind of facing north, counting traffic. And you can see the line of cars ending here, and you can see the front end of the next car coming up to add to that queue. So this is something that exists out there now. It will not get better without having a signal here. So, and like I said, we were in the understanding that this is something that is on actually MDOT's radar. There's a project slated to come through here, and Mike, you might know more about it, but this intersection is to be signalized. So I guess that's really all I have, this traffic. So with the timing, with the timing that will happen, you know, retiming this intersection, which is what we're saying is an appropriate improvement for the existing conditions. If this is an approved timing by the road commission, you know, hopefully it can get in place sooner than this development goes in, but that will help operations at the intersection at Pontiac Trail and Milford Road meet an acceptable level of service. So
if you go to future though, Joe, Bill would like to see what are the rest of the signals what does the rest of it look like in the future? So let that run a little bit. Maybe that'll help.
Okay. So yeah, in the future, really the biggest change is having this signalized intersection at the ramps, plus extending this left turn lane so you have room for the queues for the left turns that you get there.
So the lane that sort of goes over McNabb's, what is that indicating? You have the Milford.
Oh, that
right there.
that is a part of really following the MDOT guidelines when you're kind of balancing between intersections, as you can see.
Balancing traffic volumes.
Yes, thank you. Balancing traffic volumes. You use kind of what's called they call it just a dummy node. And really all you're doing is balancing between these two intersections because you have people that will be turning into here. So that's what you're accounting for. It cleans up and just helps your model run smoother. So.
And what happens north of the Pontiac Trail intersection and the entrance to the development?
There's a right there's a right in, right out at the first driveway north of Pontiac Trail.
Right.
And with a right turn lane, and then there's a signalized driveway at the north end of the development with a right turn lane. The road commission has said if Pulte lines up their drive with this development, North Drive, the signal will be allowed as long as the warrants are met, which we believe the warrants will be met. And so, as far as I know, unless there's been a pretty big change, Pulte is going to line up with that driveway, so that'll be a signalized drive. So people will be able to make a left turn out there as well. And that's a development paid signal. It's not a road commission signal.
So do we have any kind of indication from Giffords and Webster and Hubble, Roth and Clark that these new findings are validated by them and they endorse them?
Oh, wait, could I throw one thing out there, Bill, that would be kind of, isn't quite, they have not seen this last change that we came up with. So is it not exactly fair to ask them what they think? Because they have not had a chance to see it.
Okay.
We tried these timings, and we were trying to figure out how to make the thing work better. And this is kind of a revelation in the last few days. So
yeah, I've seen that come through on the last few emails today.
Yeah. So nothing else really has changed other than that.
But we would like to see that at some point. The township.
Oh yeah.
Would like to see that.
Well, I think we should provide our plan is to provide an updated report and the models for everybody to review.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Curry, do you have anything more to add for the applicant's presentation?
No, I think at this point, we're just let your consultants and planning commission members discuss and ask any questions.
Great. Sri, you're up next, or Eric?
I'll take it.
Thank you.
I thought I was prepared. One moment. Okay, I think I'll probably just go over the site data summary, what John touched on a little bit as part of my presentation. Just because this is a little different from the PUD you've seen last week, because there's still some constants and variables with the commercial development. Before we dive into it, I wanted to just give a brief introduction about the approval by Planning Commission, if they chose to make a motion tonight. This is different from Kensington. That was a rezoning. This is an overlay. So the standards of approval for crossings is different from the PUD. And as part of the approval, the ordinance also allows the applicant to ask for some deviations and the Planning Commission to recommend some modifications or conditions that are required to make the project better. Following the discussion, the Planning Commission may make the following recommendations to the Township Board. They can either make a recommendation to approve with conditions, postpone due to insufficient information, or recommend a denial. These are 4 options. So what is being asked for approval tonight? Just because we've seen site plans at the same level as a site plan, I wanted to clarify that tonight, what is being asked is to make a determination whether this layout qualifies for a C2 PUD and consider the concept plan that was proposed and included in the packet, and then consider the flexibility from the ordinance standards that's being requested. What is not considered tonight and what the Planning Commission will get another chance to review as part of preliminary site plan is the lighting plan. The lighting plan that's included in the packet is only for reference. That hasn't been reviewed or approved at this time. And the stormwater management details, other agency approvals, RCOC, Eagle Line Township regarding water, and sign and tree permits. They're not, you may find information with regards to these items, but then we will really get into detail at the time of preliminary site plan review. And this is just an exhibit that shows how the commercial and the residential developments are divided. I know Planning Commission saw this one before, so I might be reiterating some things you already know, but I just wanted to summarize it hopefully quickly. So we have the residential part in the rear, and then the 5 conceptual commercial lots along Milford and Pontiac. And this was the conceptual landscape plan that shows that John went over, so I'll just skip through this slide. And the submittal also included some pictures of the existing vegetation that is being preserved in the northeast corner of the site. And because this is being asked as one of the deviations to allow the existing vegetation in lieu of required screening. And I put together a couple of slides that kind of summarizes the site data that is being distributed in multiple places on the drawings and in the review letter. So the first one's just the total site is 35 acres, and of those 28.81 are being developed for the residential development, 175 units, including a clubhouse, all rental maintained by one developer. The commercial site is a total of 6.99 acres. The applicant indicated that there would be a maximum of 6 lots. The conceptual layout shows 5. And the applicant indicated that a maximum of 50,000 square feet would be could be allowed. The layout and the parking calculations and the traffic counts are based on 33,000 square feet. However, the applicant did clarify that they're not seeking any deviations from minimum parking counts. They will only do 50,000 if the parking requirements can be met. The parking commercial, they'll be proposed when each user comes in. They'll have to comply with the ordinance requirements and shared parking requirements. For residential, they're proposing 736 spaces, 36 guest parking spaces spread throughout the development, and 32 spaces in front of the clubhouse. The building height, the plans indicate that they would comply with the ordinance standards. The lot coverage is 15.6% for residential area, and for commercial, because it's not listed and the things are going to change, the expectation is that it would comply with the ordinance standards. The proposed setback summary, before we get into it a little bit more detail, I want to just, when we originally reviewed the plan, it was considered as residential and commercial together as one development. So when the applicant proposed, indicated the setbacks for front, side, and rear, it was along the outside boundaries. But then as we got into a little bit more discussion regarding the actual lot lines for commercial versus residential, I just wanted to bring to Planning Commission attention what the setbacks are if after the approval the lots get split. So for the residential, we have 101, all sites kind of meet the 50 feet requirement for most of the sites, except for this area where the new property line will be. The setback from that property line to these buildings is 37 feet, but that's just an internal setback. And then the parking setbacks are 45 feet for the commercial area, and then 18 feet near the clubhouse, just for a small, over here, the parking spaces get further closer to the property line just for that little 150 feet area, but the rest of it, it's 45 feet. And for the commercial individual lots, the applicant has proposed some setbacks, which will be part of their the agreement and their master deed, I'm assuming, not master deed, the agreement and their development standards packet, where each commercial user, when he buys the property, he should comply with these setbacks when they design their site layout or the drive-throughs or the buildings. Just as a note, the C2 minimum standards are 50 feet for building and parking in the front yard. As we also had a discussion previously, as you know, what kind of uses we can expect in the commercial lots, so that we can also identify the traffic impacts and also identify the impacts on the residential neighborhood. So the applicant put together this list, which talks about the proposed uses that would be permitted for those areas, and then the uses that will be prohibited from these commercial uses. And then the anticipated uses is based on their existing research and probably the interest. They feel like these kind of uses might be the final uses. But like I said, it's anticipated, it's not a guarantee, but it's just what they think this could be. We had a discussion at the last time about number of drive-through users. The applicant did not offer a limit on number of drive-through users, but they did say that they will comply with the drive-through requirements when each development comes in for a site plan approval. The applicant has a copy of the draft amendment that was reviewed by the Planning Commission last time. Okay, and as part of the conditions of residential development, I know John went through this a little bit before, but So they said all site infrastructure will be completed at one time with the exception of top course, and top course of asphalt will be completed prior to the final certificate of occupancy of the final building. And they provided a tentative phasing order starting from the clubhouse and then moving towards the other side, how they might face the construction if they have to face the construction. For the commercial development, they said that the 3 driveway approaches into the commercial area, the masonry screen wall, the roads and berms along the public road, the bioswale, and all public water sewer leads will be constructed with the first phase. Sites will be available for sale. Commercial sites will be, each unit has to come back to Planning Commission for their preliminary site plan approval and board. And then they also have to submit final engineering drawings prior to construction. I think that's the intent of what, when the applicant said approval of a final site plan, that it would be the approval for a final site plan as noted in the ordinance standards. And they had some notes about how they would restore the site if the units are not sold within 90 days of completion of initial infrastructure. These are a couple of items in the review letter we wanted to get Planning Commission input on. The applicant proposed that the Planning Commission may allow some variations with regards to landscape, lighting, and loading zone requirements when each commercial lot comes for a final preliminary site plan review. We wanted to tell the applicant that that condition is subject to Planning Commission's approval. With regards to lighting, the current lighting plan, it's conceptual. When they come back, they have to meet with the requirements, especially from the residential side, including the maximum height limit within 50 feet from the residential property line. And wanted to hear Planning Commission's input against 5 versus 6, 33,000 versus 50,000 square footage. To end the slideshow, the standards of approval are based on essentially 3 findings. Findings based on use, location and layout, and screening. Earlier this morning, we distributed a worksheet to the Planning Commission that just provides the information that's in the ordinance requirement so that when you make, as part of your discussion, you can make those findings as listed. I wanted to mention that all findings doesn't need to be met in full capacity. There should be a balancing criteria as long as each of these conditions are met in some capacity, or if the applicant provided some mitigation measures or the conditions are part of the PUD agreement, it's kind of a balancing between what's being proposed, what's being offered, and how it meets this finding. I have these slides up. If you're part of your discussion, you wanted me to bring anything up together. So there are findings based on use. The applicant included since the beginning of the submittal, there's a concept plan, community impact statement, retail market analysis, and the architectural standards and other documents. With regards to traffic, before I get into traffic a little bit, it's just as after the potential conditions for the agreement would be Planning Commission making a finding and accepting what's being proposed with regards to the setbacks, the maximum number of units and the commercial lots, the amenities, the uses, the phasing and timing, and the deviations that are being requested, the water source and performance guarantees, and as such. These will be discussed much detail at the board level once board gets a chance to look at the actual concept plan, but these would be part of Planning Commission's recommendation to board. We heard the presentation from applicant's traffic consultant, and we also have Colleen from HRC and Mo from Giffords and Webster. We we had some email communication back and forth with the applicant. And like Mike mentioned, we did not get a chance to look at the recent changes to the simulation requirements. And the slide in front of you is something you've seen before. Those are the recommendations that are recommended in the report, which the applicants have agreed to complete, take the responsibility for their construction or completion. But there are still certain other recommendations that are made in the report that RCOC said they don't have them in their 5-year plan, or that they will be doing them in the near future. Okay, with that, I think I kind of summarized what I had, and Planning Commission wants me to pull up any slide as part of your discussion. I have all those handy as usual. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Sri. Okay, now it's time for Planning Commission's discussion. Does anyone want to go first? We'll just take a raise of hand.
I can go first if you'd like,
Okay, thank you, Bill.
unless somebody else wants to.
Anyone? All right, Bill, go ahead.
I can go if Bill wants to wait.
Okay, how about we do Jim first, and then we'll do Vaughn, and then I don't have any other hands raised at the moment. And then we'll, okay. Well, how about we start with Jim, then we'll go to Vaughn, and then we'll go to Bill, and we'll see where we're at.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman. One of the question, either Sri or the applicant, listening to the traffic study we just saw, weren't we supposed to see something that includes the Kensington Ridge, plus this? Because here's my question. In the simulation, you saw no traffic coming off of Centennial that would impact the left turns off the Pontiac Trail going southbound. Remember that everything out of Kensington Ridge is going to be from Pulte. Every single Pulte property can only exit from Centennial. They have no other access to Milford Road or anything else from all the Pulte development. They all got to come out on Centennial. So that's one item. So that, I think what's going to happen is if they eliminate a left turn lane and go to a longer left turn, just to one left turn lane, it's going to be impacted by all of the traffic coming out of the other side. They showed like one car every 15, 20 seconds in that simulation. It's not going to be that way. Okay. And the other point is on the traffic study, I don't want to dwell on the traffic too long, is only 50 additional trips makes no sense for 175 units plus the commercial space that's going to be coming off onto Pontiac Trail. Are they assuming that nothing is going northbound? I mean, I don't think much is going to be going northbound on Milford Road, but I'd like a little comment on that at some point. And that's really about all I have on traffic. Coming up, looking at drawing C 2.0 and then the PEA group's response, which they covered today, both from February 26th. I only have a couple of points, is that they keep saying, and here, like, the Planning Commission may allow variances for zoning for landscaping, lighting, and loading. I hope that doesn't mean that when they come back that they expect us to give variances, because we don't see any loading zones in there. And right now, looking at the drawing on C 2.0, buildings B and E are drive-throughs. Building C is the gas station. In the gas station, everybody exiting the gas station without having to drive through the other parts of it are going to have to go northbound on Milford Road. There's no way that that gas station traffic can make a left turn out of there. I wouldn't want them to, probably, anyhow. I don't think they do, but So if they go to 6 buildings, I don't see, it would be impossible for them to add additional drive-throughs, I would think. Which is fine. And it looks like on their drawings, further drawings further back, they put the 6-foot wall there, and they put between the commercial and the residential, and they put a lot of landscaping there, which is really good. I'm just hoping that it's not going to be too. I don't know. It should handle the buffering between the commercial and the residential. And on the landscaping, the one issue we had before is on the northeast corner is the view from a few residential homes back there. They've taken and put a lot of the additional trees right back up against their buildings. I believe it was building 12, could have been building 13, that general area there. That's not going to help those people in the back. I think it will help those 2 buildings not see back, but it's not going to do anything to block the view from the other residential area into the subdivision. I mean, into this development, excuse me. And one last little thing is school buses. Looks like are they going to be able to, is there enough room for a school bus to turn around in that area once they come in off of Pontiac Trail, come past the gate? And is that island big enough for school buses to turn and get out? Because I don't see any other places where school buses might go other than near the clubhouse, and that even looks less viable. So that's a point I'd like somebody to comment on too. Other than that, I don't have any other big issues.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Vaughn, you want to go next before Bill?
Sure. I was quite pleased with what we looked at. I was pleased with the buffering and the landscaping, and I don't have any trouble with using natural vegetation as long as it's understood that should that natural vegetation disappear for whatever reason, if it expires or if it's burned or something, that it will be replaced with new vegetation. The traffic, I just had a question. Does that include the effect of the commercial, the 5 or 6 commercial buildings? I wasn't quite clear. I was surprised also that it was only 50 additional trips. But I think I'd like to sort of get a good understanding, at some point of that. Are we going to put remediation in for the commercial, what will ultimately be the commercial as well? And I think it's also important that we have a good understanding of what organization and who is going to fund whatever has to be done. And one last question on the commercial. I understand that it's hard to say at this point in time whether all 5 or 6 will be sold. But if they're not sold, or if it takes a long time to sell them, what's going to happen to that property? Is it going to be landscaped? Is it going to be used for some kind of park or whatever, so that it looks complete, at least from a visual point of view? But those are my questions.
Okay, Bill, do you want to go next, or do you want me to see if anyone else?
It's fine. It's up to you.
Why don't you go ahead?
I guess my thought is I was hedging towards going ahead with the motion tonight. But before I do that, I just wanted to clear up a couple of issues that were asked for last time. Primarily, let's start off with the architectural design standards, because we did ask that the masonry block be excluded, and the applicants indicated that they would not like to do that. But I think it's necessary that we do that. The point of the architectural finishes is to make it match with the community And the statement of concrete block is way too vague and large to really determine what that is. Decorative concrete block can be sandblasted scored block that looks exactly like block. And I don't know how you pull that off in a residential development. So that was one thing. The other thing that I wanted to clear up in the discussion that we had over screening. And if I read the ordinance the way it is written under the architectural guidelines, Sheree, I don't know if you're capable of bringing that up. What my concern is with screening is that it is integral to the building and that it does the job of screening, not just from the immediate, but from all areas. So if you could move down to architectural guidelines B under building massing and forms, item D. On the first page. On this right here, I think it's a little confusing, probably more from what I said, but all rooftop mechanical equipment shall be independently screened on all sides in a manner that is complements the building overall design and transition. And then you've added into it to the surrounding scenery with natural design elements for every building and tenant. So I really wanted it to be that, not only that, but it says the use of the parapet wall is also suitable rooftop screening material and should conform to at least 5-foot setback. I did not intend the parapet wall to be moved back 5 feet. I intended that any independent screening be held back 5 feet. So if it's a parapet that's integral to the building and matches the form of the building, then that's fine to have that on the facade of the building. But any other independent screening, typically some type of metal screening, would be held back 5 feet from the parapet. And then to put it into a height that blocks the view of the equipment and any assorted hardware from any residence, apartment, adjacent property, or roadway. So I really am concerned about the overall view across this site. Those were the two things that I wanted to clear up and put into the architectural component of it. And I don't think that they're major, but the decorative block is a no. I don't mind that at some point in a variance situation during site plan approval of each of them, if somebody comes in with samples that we can look at as a planning commission, as we've done many times in the past, we can make a better decision than by simply saying decorative block will be allowed. And we have to start fending off what decorative block really is. So I'd like to get that incorporated into the lighting. The other component of, let me just go through it slowly so I don't mess anything up. Sheree, in your note, you said that the woodland analysis will be done at the site plan review element. Is that correct?
Yes, in the sense that, doing the calculations, how many trees are being removed, what's being replaced, what's being put into the escrow, in those terms. But the applicant, as part of the conceptual, included information about where they will be removed and what are the potential locations for replacements.
But the actual analysis by an arborist, which is required by ordinance, has not been done, and that will be done at the site review process.
Right. But did you say it's required by the ordinance for at the PUD level?
No, in our woodlands preservation ordinance, we asked for an analysis of the trees to be done for monumental historical trees.
Yes, that is correct. So that will be done at the site plan review, which is the typical standard for plan reviews.
The other issue was the statement by the environment from the engineers that indicated that the wetlands would be reviewed on site at a later time. That'll be done at the site plan review.
Yes, that is typical how we do a site plan reviews. We will have a site inspection and they have to get required permits from MD Eagle at the time of preliminary site plan.
So I just want to make sure that it's not part of the concept, Ryan.
No, it's not.
We all know that the drive-through ordinance did go through introduction, so that'll have an impact on the development. And the screening along the residential areas is still a concern of mine from the standpoint that when it's going to be done. So we go through a phasing plan that states what type of units when will be built. What is the time frames around each one of those phases? Do we have that?
I think I have the screenshot of what John shared. Give me a moment. Let me pull that out. Okay, so John, jump in anytime if I'm misunderstood. So all the areas within the orange boundary will be done with the initial phase. So between commercial and residential, the bioswale will be built and the wall will be built, but the trees will not be planted because, as John stated, that it would be hard to get the construction equipment to build the houses without destroying the trees.
Right, I understood that component of it, but I believe there's a phasing plan that talks about how many residential units will be coming on at one time. And then the request is that the vegetation is not put in until the end of each one of those phases due to the same reason. So when we take a look at group one, which is building 1 and 2,
right,
15 units, what is the time frame? What are we looking at the duration of time to complete all of the individual groups 1 through 6?
I defer the question to the applicant. I think he would be the right person to answer.
Sure. Sri, do you want me to address that now? I'm kind of saving all these for the end, but I'll hit this one now since we're talking about it. That makes sense.
I'd rather make sure that we get everything up front before I make my motion.
Sure. So this is, we keep calling it phasing. It's really, there's no intent to stop after a certain number of buildings and wait for anything. It's just the reality of getting, you're not going to get trades out or probably financing to build 18 buildings all at the same time. So the intent is in that order, they'll build, clubhouse, building 1 and 2. Those 3 will be worked on at one time. When the construction of the building and the site of each of those, the driveways, parking lots are completed, then the landscaping for those buildings will be put in. And then go on to the next 3 buildings. Those will be built. Once those 3 are built, landscaping will go in. And as far as how long that construction sequence for each of the buildings takes, I couldn't answer that.
Okay, so if I'm understanding what you're saying is that you'll work in clusters. And as you start a cluster, you'll start a cluster and finish a cluster. You won't start foundations in cluster 1, move ahead to the structure, start simultaneously starting foundations maybe in group 6 to keep, you're going to work in sections.
That is the intent. Adriano, if you want to chime in, if we're not completely understanding that, that's beyond the level that I've thought about it, if you might start moving on to foundations at some point during one cluster.
Because logistically, I think if you had a crew on site that was doing foundations, hopefully it'd be to your advantage to keep them working as long as possible before they leave. I don't know.
That's probably true.
So at this point, we don't know how long the overall construction process, 2 years, 3 years.
We do know, wait, this is Mike.
Hey, Mike.
We do know that when we began the study, we had to have a build out year. So the build out year is 2022.
That you'll be totally built out.
Correct.
And your start date is when?
Well, that was going to be sooner than right now, but there may be a month
Right.
or two one way or another. But I think as far as when we needed that information for the traffic study. So we're a few
Yeah.
months off now a little bit, but I think 2022 was the full build out.
Adriano, if you want to chime in on that, given the
Yeah,
process where we are.
we set up an internal phasing, if you want to call it that way, or that, so that we start the clubhouse and a couple of buildings along Milford Road, and our intent is to work our way east and out and exit Pontiac Trail, using the Pontiac Trail entrance as a construction entrance, so that we're not tying up construction vehicles along Milford Road. Are we going to start group 1 and not start foundations on group 2? No, our intent is to start and go right down the line as if it were a domino effect. But internally, we have to establish some sort of phasing, internal phasing, just for our own construction purposes. As far as build out, we hope to build out the residential, depending on the economy and the subcontractor, anywhere between 18 and 24 months.
And the reason I ask these questions goes back to the screening. And I am concerned about the residents that live on the street just east of it, which is Ken Cardine. I drove to the back of that cul-de-sac. I sat there for a while. I have photographs from that cul-de-sac in the wintertime of the existing vegetation. And I have pictures sitting there looking all the way through to the expressway. So the existing vegetation is all deciduous, deciduous tree form and scrub. And it is very hard to document that in terms of replacement. So I'm not in favor of giving any credit for that, but I do acknowledge that your landscape plan does show what could be adequate screening. It's hard to determine the opacity of screening based on plant material. But what I don't like is the fact that you're going to go ahead and do all of the infrastructure, land balancing and that nature towards the first part. And the people that are living on that road will continue to look at a construction site for 2 years because there'll be no screening afforded them while you're doing your construction. And I feel the screening vegetation. I understand that your buildings are real close to the vegetation, but unfortunately, I'm more concerned about, the applicants that live right on that street behind there. So
Well, I could appreciate that, but you don't landscape first, so they can go in there, tear it up, and then they have to replace all the landscaping. I mean, that, it's just like any other residential home. The home is built and then it's landscaped.
I understand it, but you also have to understand living there for 2 years.
Well, yeah, I don't know how many residents we have to the north or to the east. I don't have a computer with me, but I can't imagine there being a significant or a large amount of residents that are to the north and to the east of us.
Sometimes what I've seen done is a construction fence be put up with a screening material on it at 8 feet height that gives them some barrier between that. Some cities actually require that, even if it's 1 or 2 or 3. So just leaving it open, I'm just saying, I understand your problem with vegetation. Certainly you don't want to kill all the vegetation, but the residents that live there have the ability to enjoy their homes while you're doing your work.
Well, I'm willing to commit that if we have a resident or two that has a problem with looking at our project, our community, which is going to be well maintained, I can assure you that I'll address it at that time. And if that means I need to put in 100 feet of fencing, I'm going to do so. But
then
ask me to do that, prematurely. I don't know that makes any sense.
So I can insert that into my motion and you'll agree to it.
Sure. Yeah, if we have a problem with a resident, and like I said, I don't think we have that many residents to the north or to the east. I wish maybe Robert could go on Google Maps and tell me how many residents we have to the north and to the east. But I don't, just based on memory, I don't think we have
about
that many.
6.
How many?
6.
Yeah, so I mean, we don't have a great deal of residents to the north and to the east. And if we have someone that is terribly upset, we're going to always step up and to try to keep peace between ourselves, the residents, and the township. We're not here to fight City Hall.
Hold on just 1 minute while I'm writing.
Yes, sir.
Bill, are you almost ready, or do you want me to have someone go while you're waiting?
That was pretty much everything I had, except I want to go ahead and make a motion, which will cover a lot of the other issues that have been mentioned already.
Okay, well, before you do that, I just want to make sure that there's no one else on the planning commission that has something to add that hasn't already been said. So, okay, I have 2 hands raised. I will take 3 hands raised. I will take Neil, then Miles, and then Dave.
The major suggestion I have is that we have a one piece of paper that outlines all of the proposed traffic improvements, who is going to pay for them, and an estimate of what that's going to cost. So that's an agreement with the crossings of Milford and of course, whatever impact that the Kensington Ridge development would be. So anyway, we would need one of those so that we understand exactly what's going to be the improvements, who's going to pay for them, and about how much that's going to run.
Jennifer, do you have any response to that?
Well, I guess I just don't understand what you mean by one piece of paper.
Okay, 2 pieces of paper.
No, I mean, I guess you're going to have a PUD agreement with the developer that's going to outline all the aspects of the development. And it's,
so let me restate that, Jennifer. It's written down on a piece of paper within the agreement.
yeah, so so there's probably not going to be like, let's say, first of all, the PUD agreement is only going to be with the crossings. It's not going to be with the crossings and Kensington. Kensington's going to have its own PUD agreement, which will spell out all of it on this chart here. Each one of their PUD agreements spells out their own traffic improvements. There probably won't be any mention of the like financial value of those improvements. Or let's say if MDOT or RCOC or someone's going to put that light in at the light coming off the ramp there that they were talking about earlier, that's not going to be in their agreement either. But what their PUD agreements for each development will spell out is the stuff that's listed in front of you right now, and probably maybe phasing for it and things of that nature.
Yeah, as long as that's agreed with the developer, in this case Crossings, that they understand that they are to provide that, and that's part of the PUD. So it doesn't come up as a question later when we start pointing fingers at each other.
No, you will, that will all be included in your PUD agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, if I may add one comment while we're
Yeah,
in that.
please.
So like I said, the items that are highlighted in the chart in front of you are the ones the applicant has already committed to construct. They are also shown on the plan. The right turn lane, the turn taper, and the only item was the installing the traffic signal, where the Kensington did align their driveway with Crossings driveway so that the traffic signal warrant can be justified by the RCOC. But we don't know the timing of individual constructions. We don't know when Kensington's going to come, Crossings may come. Other than that, everything else is shown on the plan as being applicant's responsibility, the items that are highlighted.
So if there is some kind of an arrangement between Crossings and Kensington for joint financing of that traffic signal because they've lined up their entrances, there'd be some kind of reference to that in the each PUD agreement. So the PUD agreement for Crossings isn't gonna put any kind of responsibility or liability on Kensington and vice versa, but there will be some kind of reference to that improvement and, you know, an anticipation as to how that will be installed and financed.
Okay, thank you.
The Kensington applicant at the last meeting clarified that they will not be taking part in cost sharing with the traffic signal because that's not warranted by their traffic counts.
Okay.
Okay. Neil, are you good?
Yes.
Okay. Next was Miles, I believe.
Hey, thank you. At least 2 points. One is to agree with Jim concerning that there has been stated a number of times that we are that we may allow flexibility at site plan. And I agree with that statement, but to further it, we also may not allow the requested flexibility at site plan. And I, for one, don't sign blank checks. So if this is a statement that we are agreeing to things we haven't seen, I disagree with it totally. So the statement that we might do something, yeah, sure, but we might not as well. We have complete freedom. Shri.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Just wanted to clarify that with regards to loading, the typical requirements in the ordinance are it should be in the rear yard, and then there's a minimum, like a square footage requirement based on the front length of the building, and then that it should be screened, and each use should come up with the loading zone. What the applicant is requesting is that they will most likely be in the rear yard, but they might be shared between uses. So you may not have one loading space for each use, but there might be one between two uses. And the other possibility is that depending on the use, some users may not require a loading space and some users may require a smaller loading space. So the flexibility they're asking for is not for the location of the loading zone, but for the size of the loading zone, the ability to share the loading zone, and maybe the ability to not have a loading zone if the use doesn't require one. If the Planning Commission wants a little bit more comfort, we can include some conditions saying that that flexibility will only be allowed if they meet these conditions. And
if those areas of flexibility requested are spelled out, I
Right.
feel a lot better.
Okay, and then with regards to lighting, like I said in my review letter, there are no spillover requirements between commercial lots in the current zoning ordinance. So even if the light spills over the internal property lines for commercial districts, they are still complying with the ordinance requirements. So I think that is kind of a moot point right now because we don't want any flexibilities built in for lighting requirements from the residential property line, which the applicant did say they will comply with the height requirements and the spillover requirements. So I think reserving flexibility with regards to lighting is probably a moot point. With regards to landscaping, I wanted to clarify one of the Planning Commission members' earlier concern that the flexibility is not from the landscape plan that is presented to you. That is fixed. The flexibility is just from maybe internal parking lot trees or something, the buffer requirements between commercial lots. So the flexibility from landscape requirements is just limited to the commercial portion. It does not change what's part of the concept plan beyond that on the perimeter or on the frontage within the residential. It's just within the commercial sites internally, not even around the perimeter, internal commercial sites. I hope that clarifies a little bit.
Yes. That was only one point.
Okay, keep going.
Concerning traffic, I did like the study. I liked the simulation. There was a lot of good information. It's stuff that I am not an expert on, and not to put you on a spot, Colleen, you have just seen this, as I understand, maybe tonight or just very, very recently. Would you feel okay about making a comment? Again, don't mean to put you on the spot, and yet I am. Mike said something that a lot of us kind of didn't believe. 50 extra trips when you have what probably is 150 couples that are both working. That's 300 cars the way I count it. That's a far, not to mention in commercial, that's a far cry from 50. So
Madam Chair, may I answer?
You may.
So I have just seen it tonight, so I don't have any background on the actual study. I believe that a lot of their left turns are coming out of the signalized driveway at the north end of the property. But like I said, I haven't seen the revised study, so I don't know exactly what the trip assignment looks like for this version. The applicant may be able to show you on a figure, but they may not have that yet for this version of the study. So I agree that 50 seems low, but I would hold judgment before until I see the actual study that they're proposing.
Okay,
I've seen the old version, but I don't know exactly what might have changed between the last version and this one. So,
okay. Shri or Mohammed, does anyone want to make a comment on Miles's point, or do you want to reserve it for when a later time, or if they're at the board for this?
I can make a quick comment.
Thank you.
I think because of the nature of the land uses, there is something we call pass-by trips, which are basically trips that are already on the road that use the commercial like shops or maybe gas station or something, but they're not additional trips. So there'll be trips that use the development, but they're not added. I think that's what like majority of the trips on that side of Pioneer Trail is that. So that I think that creates a little confusion that maybe the trips are kind of small, but there's actually there's more vehicles using the site, but they're not added. They're not like additional trips.
Okay, thank you, Mohammed. Shri, do you have anything to add to any of this? Or do you want to just defer till later?
I'll defer to later.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Miles, do you have any more comments?
One more, perhaps, still on traffic. There was a little bit of an allusion to RCOC and MDOT, but I really was hoping for a more of an update of here's what their position is. And I see a letter from Gary P. But that's almost a month old. Anything new that you can tell us about what RCOC and MDOT think about your study?
Who wants to take that question?
I'll probably just give it. I think we haven't received any further communication from RCOC since then, because that was quite detailed and comprehensive. But if the applicant received any comments based on their ongoing communication, I'll defer that to Jill.
Okay.
We have not received any new comments, so.
Okay, thank you, Jill.
Okay.
Miles, do you have anything else?
Yeah, maybe one more. And I was trying, those, we can't avoid a gas station, it sounds like. They're trying to say, yeah, they want to reserve a gas station. Sure, okay. Does our sign ordinance preclude building one of those god-awful high signs that you can see from the freeway? I was going through our zoning and signage, and I couldn't convince myself that was eliminated.
Sri, do you want to answer, or anyone else that might have an answer for Miles?
I'll look up the answer while Member Davis goes through the other comments, and then once I have the response, I'll raise my hand.
All right,
Okay.
thank you, Sri.
Fair enough.
Miles, do you have anything else while she's looking that up?
I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay. Dave, you are next. Do you have anything to add?
I hate to keep sticking on the traffic point. I appreciate Mohammed's comment that they don't expect any, much additional trips for the commercial. However, if we're talking about potentially having 2 fast food restaurants and 1 gas station that's accessible from the freeway, a well-run fast food restaurant can turn 2 cars a minute, as much as 2 cars a minute. And if we're talking about, and even if it's 1 car per minute, that's 120 trips that could potentially come half from freeway traffic. Add in a gas station, it just seems like, plus 175 units of residents, it just seems like there's going to be more than 50 trips per hour added into that area. And I really wish the traffic simulation would show the ingress and egress traffic from all of the different driveways on the site, for the residential and the commercial traffic, for especially worst case scenario with highly efficient businesses. But that's my only comment. Thank you.
Okay, Mike, you had your hand up. Would you like to answer Dave's question?
I need to answer a number of questions because I somehow confused the whole audience, it feels like, which
Okay,
was
go
not
ahead.
intended to do. So let's start over again here.
Go
The
ahead.
only thing I was talking about with 50 trips is 50 new trips to that left turn movement, westbound left turn movement, during the evening peak hour. That's it. The other peak hour trips are going in and out of other driveways and everything. There's plenty of trips being generated, but the additional trips to that left turn during the evening peak hour is 50 from our site. That's it. The study didn't include the Kensington site because the Kensington site, the way these studies are all done, you have a build-out date. So the Kensington site, we are finished before they are. We're finished in 2022. They're finished in 2024. So we're not going to show their improvements. That should be part of their study as opposed to show our development. School buses, I think, are supposed to be able to circulate around through the site. So I don't think there should be any problem with school buses. The commercial traffic is part of the study, as well as the residential traffic. Remember, you have to forecast the trips for all of the units, all of the square footages, and we study, these traffic studies are during the peak hours of the adjacent street traffic, which is sometime 7 to 9, usually in the morning, and sometime 4 to 6 in the afternoon. Those numbers are in the hundreds. Our site will generate about 4,300 less trips daily, not hourly, but daily versus the Kajolian site. So did I clear that up this time? I didn't really mean to confuse everybody with that.
Okay, thank you.
One more thing I think is important, and then so that we don't have any confusion on this either. Gary Petrovich's email, March 1st, I think it was. There was a lot of discussion about it, a number of things in there, all of which we're good with, except Milford and Pontiac Trail, which we are no longer going to, at least we're going to recommend in our study. Of course, Colleen and others haven't seen it yet, the change that, but it doesn't include Milford and Pontiac Trail. His comments in there are now changed because of the change in traffic signal timing that Mo and has told us, and Road Commission has told us that we're allowed to make. We made those changes, so we came up with another option to fix and solve the traffic problems at that intersection. So I think those were all the questions that I caught, but I didn't want to have everybody wandering off into the weeds like that. I really apologize for doing that. So thanks.
Thank you for speaking up. Dave, do you have anything else? You can just shake your head if you don't.
No, I don't.
Okay, before I go on, Sri, are you ready or can I keep going?
Okay, so from what I looked at, for property businesses in C2 district, a maximum of 2 signs are allowed, either a wall sign, a wall between wall, monument, and freestanding. And canopy signs are probably appropriate for gas stations, but they are limited to 20% of the canopy area and 100 square feet. I didn't see any requirement that would allow those tall pole lights in the sign ordinance based on the quick review of sign ordinance, what I did. I defer to Jen if she has anything else to add, but from what I looked at it, there does appear to be a limit to the size and the monument and the wall. I don't believe tall signs on larger poles are allowed per our sign ordinance.
I don't recall that. Tim might, but what I do know is your sign ordinance needs some work. And so when we do the clear zoning, we're going to have to address some of the sign ordinance provisions. So not that we would allow something like that, but just when they make the difference, when they make the distinctions between certain uses, the courts have now have different rulings about signs. So we do need to address your sign ordinance. We're just waiting on the clear zoning to have that discussion.
We used to have a sign height on setback too.
Right.
The taller it gets, the further off the street it is. So it'll be located in the residential portion if it's going to be visible from 96.
Right. The area of the sign is dependent on the setback and the lot frontage.
Yeah,
Kind of limits the area of the sign.
exactly. Especially if those are condoed in front, their width is not going to be very much.
Right. And then there's also a cutoff, like it cannot exceed 20% or 100 square feet
Yeah.
in addition to that. But the applicant can probably throw some light on whether is he allowing one monument sign for each commercial site or one at the entrances to the commercial, or if there are any standards that are included in the architectural.
Sri, before we do that, is this something that is doesn't need to be discussed because of the concept plan? And is this something that we can work on when we're in site plan approval? We don't need this for today, do we?
We don't, because unless we have any, like Jen said, the sign ordinance will be undergoing probably some changes. So the applicant will be expected to comply with the sign ordinance requirements at the time of when he applies for the sign permit. So,
okay.
Now that we know that those tall pole signs are not allowed, we can defer this discussion to when the sign permits are applied for.
All right, that sounds good.
Madam Chair, may I statement?
Sure.
I'd like to put the planning commission at ease. It's not at all our intention to have one of those obnoxious, tall gas station signs that's visible from I-96.
Awesome.
Everyone needs to understand that we are going to own and retain the multifamily as a long-term investment. And we are also going to be part of the condo association, which manages the commercial properties so that I ensure constant beautification, flowers, fertilization, so on and so forth. So I just wanted to make those comments for the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Are we, Miles, I believe we were on you. Are you finished? Or no, we weren't on you. Where were we?
Yeah, past me. I'm done.
Past you. I had gone to Dave. Dave, are you
Yeah,
finished?
you're down to me, and I was finished, but I would also like to recommend that since we've been sitting near our computers for a little over 2 hours, that perhaps we could work a break in here sometime.
Okay, give me just 1 minute. I got one more planning commissioner. I believe, Mark, did you want to say something that hasn't been said already?
No, I was going to originally, but my concerns have been addressed. It's primarily the variations that were being discussed with regard to lighting, loading, and landscape. We've covered that sufficiently.
Okay, great. All right, well then I think we've heard from everyone. Would it be okay if we take a 2-minute break then? Or do you want to, or can we just go? Because I
Can we
think we're
just go
almost
through it?
done.
Can we just go through it, the motion right now? And
Yeah,
finish
I think
this section?
we're almost done.
So-
Dave, is that okay? We'll just keep
Oh,
going.
absolutely. I just wanted to work a break in at some point.
Okay, all right. Let's see if we can finish this part and then we'll see where we land, okay? Before you make your motion, does the applicant have anything else they want to say before Bill makes his motion?
I just wanted to go through some of, we've got a whole list of questions that were asked, and I was kind of waiting to the end to hit those if everyone thinks it's appropriate to. Mike chimed in, I think he answered all the traffic ones.
Yes, John, go ahead and say whatever it is that you want to say before Bill makes his motion.
I'll just start with comments. I think Mike hit the traffic ones and the 50 trips. I think Sri fairly well answered the variations for landscaping, loading, and lighting. It's more of intent that they have the opportunity to, because with a PUD, we can't just go to ZBA for a variance. So that's why that's built in there from Sri's suggestion. Regarding the landscaping at the wall, we've done a few revisions of that and beefed it up a couple times to keep making that thicker to protect the residents from the commercial sites. Sri had made a comment that we were asking for variation from landscape buffers with the existing vegetation. We're no longer doing that. What's on plan is ordinance required conflicting use buffer. Mike addressed the school buses. On Vaughn's, he also commented about the landscape and the perimeter. If something happened, like a burn of the existing vegetation, we are proposing the landscape buffer now, so that shouldn't be an issue. There's a question about the landscape of the lots in the front if they're not sold. As was mentioned, they will be seeded and seeded with lawn, and the development agreement would address any maintenance of that that's required when those are vacant, mowing and weed and whatnot. Regarding the architectural standards, I would let Adriana or Robert chime in if they have any concerns with the comments about the screening of mechanical. Our intent was to address Bill's comment and with required screening for mechanicals. Regarding the block, if you read through the facade requirements, there's a requirement for at least 50% face brick on any of the facades that face the public streets and at least 30% glass. So at most, any block would be 30% or less of the front facing facades. We did talk through the phase landscape. And I think that's it. I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't anything out there that we hadn't addressed or responded to from the comments. And unless anyone else has anything to add from my side, I think I'm good.
Okay, does anyone else from the applicant side have anything else? Okay.
No, I'm
Okay. All right. We can entertain a motion at this point then.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend to the Township Board approval of the C2 PUD determination and the C2 PUD concept plan per C2 PS 20500 L-16-34-300-03 based on the documents that were submitted, based on the revised drawings that were submitted on 2/26/21, and the information attached to the 325-21 submission to the PC with the Planning Commission. This recommendation is based on the ordinance, which is 32-714, and I'll go through some of the items that are on the ordinance itself, and then some other conditions attached to that. The location, it's appropriate. It's in harmony. It's not going to cause any real concern with the developments of the zoning district. It's not detrimental to the orderly development of the adjacent properties. And as mentioned before, it's actually a lot less intense than what the original C2 development could have been. And from what I can see, the commercial uses that have been suggested are sort of backed up by the market analysis. The next item in determining the recommendation is going to be the traffic. And the biggest part of the traffic, will it be hazardous or inconvenient to the neighborhood? My feeling about this is that this is our third meeting. This project has been here for a year, and we still don't have all the information necessary to decide what to do with the traffic. So my outcome to that is based on what I know today. I feel that the traffic issue will be resolved at the board level to demonstrate to the traffic impact will not be detrimental or hazardous or inconvenient for the residents. And so that is a condition that will go on to the board, and the board will have to weigh in on making that final decision on the traffic. I think it's a little bit beyond what the Planning Commission has the capability of really understanding. We hear the information from all the engineers, which is good. But I think at that point, someone's got to step up to the plate and dedicate some dollars to this. Planning Commission cannot do that. The last item here is really dealing with screening. The location of the building in the Heights I really don't feel that that at all will hinder the neighborhood around us or stop them from utilizing their property in any way. The location and height of the walls and the fences is a similar situation. I was concerned about the adjacent landscaping to the sites, but I've been made certain by the applicant that if any resident is concerned or has a concern, they can contact the developer himself and work out a mutual understanding of how to prevent that. With the conditions that are attached to that motion, the number of commercial is a maximum of 5 and could be one large building with one tenant, but there is no multi-tenant strip shopping. The next is that, I'm sorry, I'm getting, yes, I can copy you, Wendy, when I get a chance. Okay, if I can go back to this now. So the number is 5, that we're not going to have, we can have a larger unit, but it'll be a single tenant unit, as I indicated in the last meeting, and that there'll be no strip shopping. It's a maximum development of 33,000 square feet. All the perimeter landscaping that is showing that abuts the adjacent residential will be installed in compliance with the documents that were submitted on February 26th. That sort of has answered itself due to the fact that they've agreed to do the berming. And it's our full understanding that any screening that may be looked at in the future, reanalyzed in the future, is for the internal commercial area only. I really do not like saying something like that may be, because it's undefinable and it's unenforceable. We don't have an ordinance that allows our building official to go out and make those kind of decisions in the field. I want to restate that any of the existing vegetation that's being utilized needs to be documented by species and size and be worked into the maintenance agreement as we've done in the past. So that if in the event that it is damaged in any way, altered in any way, then it has to be replaced. Sorry, this is long, but I want to get through it all. The applicant is to indicate to the township board the domestic potable water system what domestic water potable system will be delivered to the site at the time of conceptual approval. We've gone quite a bit of time now as to how we're going to get water to the site, but I'm asking that this be determined at the time of conceptual approval by the board. In the event that an alternate B private well system or water system is required, the architectural design, screening, noise, vibration, and building massing is not part of this conceptual approval and will be determined at the time of site plan approval. Next, if the traffic signal at the entrance to the multifamily residential unit is not permitted by the road commission or any other agency, the applicant will install a pedestrian crossing signal at their cost. The other is the applicant shows to the board that the dedicated sewer system for that site is capable of supporting the demand caused by the buildings, and submit that to the township engineer for their review. So we have a sewer system, and part of the determination of the PUD is determined that there will be no negative impact on an existing facility such as the sewer. So we have to, I'm asking the applicant show to the board the engineering required to support that there'll be no additional demand on that sewer system that's in place already. And I think that is it for my motion.
Okay, there's a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I think I don't know who went first, but I'll let,
I think we need to still have discussion.
oh, I know you do a motion and then a second, and then we do discussion. Am I correct?
Yes, I think we have a motion and a second, right?
Okay. Neil will be the second for the recording secretary. Discussion amongst planning commissioners about the motion that Bill made. Anyone have anything that they'd like to discuss? Neil.
Bill, I
Yes.
wasn't quite clear on your motion is requesting one building, one commercial building, or one or 5 buildings as is proposed?
Where in my motion, I'm asking that it be, I'm stating that it will be 5 maximum buildings
Okay,
with one building that could be larger. And
Okay.
that it be a single tenant building,
okay.
No strip malls.
no strip malls.
Okay, are you
Bill?
clear, Neil?
Yeah, Bill,
Okay, wait,
Yeah.
Vaughn,
sorry.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
is it appropriate to include something in your motion that this does not include the wetlands that will be covered as part of the site plan?
Well, what I had asked earlier, that was one of the environmental impacts and woodlands that I had, but I'm understanding right now from Sri that those 2 issues are not part of the conceptual review, and they will be done as time of site plan review.
Yeah.
Sri, do you want to answer?
Yeah, I think in general, if it's not, if any deviation or specific condition is not part of the agreement, then the applicant is expected to comply with the ordinance requirements at the time of site plan review. So it's implied, because we didn't give them any flexibility with wetlands or woodlands, it's implied that he should comply with the requirements at the time of
Right.
site plan.
Okay, sounds good. Anyone else have any comments about the motion? Miles?
Bill, this is more a question. You had a number of things to consider if a well is used. Would it be appropriate to add the effect on the aquifer to that list of potential bad things of a well?
We can certainly add that. That would come standard with an Oakland County Health Department review. They would have to, but we can add that to my motion. I'll add that.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Dave, your hand is raised.
Yes, Bill, I have a quick question about single occupancy in a building. I know that it, like gas stations and like a sandwich shop or something like that can coexist very successfully without a lot of increased traffic. Is that something that we wouldn't want to permit?
What I'm saying by occupancy is an occupant. So if that owner sublets or contracts with another company to come in and handle the convenience store part of it, that's not what I'm intending. I'm intending that we don't have different uses in a row in a building. So you walk into a building and there's 3 different fast food places and a coffee shop. If the gas station has a convenience store, I wouldn't have an issue with that.
Right. Is there some way to word that in our in the motion to allow, you know, something like, I understand we don't want a strip mall, but you know, a secondary usage of, especially I think of like gas stations. It's common to see a Subway or a Pizza Hut Express or something like that that's inside the building.
Yeah, we can say that it could be an accessory to the primary use.
Bill, are you okay with that? It's your motion.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Anyone else?
So with those 2 add-ins to my motion, were they supported with a second?
Second.
That would be Neil. Okay. Neil supported the changes. I assume, Bill, that you'll write those down for our recording secretary.
Pardon?
I assume that you'll write those down and include them in your motion for our recording secretary.
You have 3 people taking notes right now, but I
Okay.
can do that.
Thank you. Just so that it's clear, we just need to make sure that we get it completely right.
Well, I already recommended to Wendy to get that paper from Bill because his motion's gonna need to be verbatim, so.
Okay,
Have the video recording as well.
okay. Okay, so I have a motion and we have a second. Can we please have roll call vote?
Mazzara,
Yes.
DeVry,
Yes.
Latka,
Yes.
Rishka,
Yes.
Kashkarian,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Gilo,
Yes.
Mallon.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, we only have a few more items left. If you would like to still take a break, now would be a good time to do so. Otherwise, we will keep going. Does anyone need a break? Am I seeing any hands raised? No? Are we going to keep going?
Push
Okay.
through.
Okay, let's push through. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. And as Bill stated, we will add the February 25th meeting. So we'll do that first. Does anyone have any changes or can we approve the minutes as stated? You can go through page by page if you would like. Does anyone have any questions? Please raise your hand so I can see.
It's the February 25th.
Yep, February 25th.
I think we should have taken a 2-minute break.
Would you like a 2-minute break? We can still do that if you'd like to.
Yeah, because I got paper all over. If we could do that.
Okay.
that'd be great.
That's fine with me. If we could take a 2-minute break and Brian, are you here? Can you help us with that?
Yes, it's 9:32, so we call it 9:34 or 9:35.
Okay, great. Everyone get yourself together and turn off your video and mute yourself. Thank you. And come right back at 2 minutes, please. Looks like we're getting close. Okay, it's 9:36. Do we have Neil, Bill, and Wendy?
I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Neil.
Says the host has stopped it, my video.
Oh, okay. Brian, can you turn on?
Yeah,
His video.
I turned it off temporarily while you stepped away, Neil.
Okay.
There you go.
All right, I believe we're all back. So on to approval of the minutes, and we will start with February 25th. Does anyone have any changes to the minutes as they are written?
Just have
I
one
have-
question still, because I'm trying to get to them,
Okay,
but I don't, in the February 25th minutes that were on the website, we had in the February 20th, a part A, a part B, and then also the overall minutes. And I noticed on one of the minutes that was not stated as to who was present.
Can I step in, Bill?
Yeah, because, just 1 minute, please. On the January 20th, 28th minutes, it says call to order for the roll. It doesn't indicate who was present, who was absent, and who was other, which has been sort of our traditional way of doing minutes, not only here, but at the other, at the board. So
Are
I
you
think
on the
that's something I
January-
would like to have changed back again.
all right, but we're talking about February
So you're on the February 28th.
25th.
So on the 25th, did it have the attendance on those minutes?
That's what I was trying to say. I would like to add into the minutes, the attendance and location of each of the commissioners.
You'll add that, Wendy?
I will. I have it right here.
Okay. Bill, anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, anyone else have any changes to the February 25th meetings minutes? Okay, if none, we'll have a motion to approve the minutes with the changes regarding attendance.
So move.
That was Vaughn, second.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Dave, second. Roll call vote, please.
Koshkarian,
Yes.
Latka,
Yes.
Mallon,
Yes.
Mizera,
Yes.
DeVries,
Yes.
Rishka,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Gilo.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the minutes for March 18th of 2021. Does anyone have any changes to those minutes?
My same comments would apply according to the minutes that were updated later today in the email that came out today. On the March 18th, it again indicates when the meeting was called to order and the roll call.
Okay, so you would like to say that they were present or absent and where they are?
Yes.
Okay. Wendy, are you okay with that?
I'm good with that. I will definitely update that.
Okay, does anyone else have any other changes to the minutes from March 18? Okay. We need a motion.
Move approval.
Thank you. Vaughn, and a
Yeah.
second.
Second.
That was Neil. Roll call vote, please.
Koshkarian,
Yes.
DeVries,
Yes.
Mizera,
Yes.
Gilo,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Mallon,
Yes.
Latka,
Yes.
Rishka.
Yes. Okay, motion passes. All right, we are on to planning consultants' remarks. Shri or Eric, does anyone have anything?
The moment, I think Kensington will be following at the next meeting in April. So they'll come back with their revised revisions and response letter from the last meeting.
Okay. Anyone else? Eric, you good? Okay, then we have our next item is Planning Commission correspondence from Heartland. Is someone going to talk about that? We have a letter.
It simply is included in the packet as a correspondence for your knowledge.
Okay, so it just says that they are doing their comprehensive plan and they will have a public hearing. All right, anything further on that?
It's just a legal requirement whenever communities are updating their comprehensive plans, their master plans, they have to notify adjacent jurisdictions within so far.
Okay. All right, next, planning commissioners' remarks. Planning commissioners have anything? I seen, oh, Neil?
Yeah, I had just a thought. You know, we've been going through some fairly complex packages, and I know a lot of people have been putting a lot of work in because, you know, there's just lots and lots of paper, and it reflects all the work everyone's been doing. My suggestion, and just bring it up to the group, is would it be helpful for us to have a like an open issues list by project so that we can track these items as they come up and kind of keep them alive on a list and know if they've been addressed, and the responsible party is, you know, has performed as the issue requires, and then we just keep that list going. And it's almost like a live document until we get to the end of the project and the recommendation to the board.
I believe Shri does that pretty well in her letters. She keeps a running list and then highlights them, and that is our running list. That is our kind of document that you go by.
Unfortunately, we end up, when we have several meetings, we end up with 3 or 4 different sets of documents, and they're just not linked or consolidated in one spot, in my opinion.
I could provide a one-page summary for Kensington in addition to the review letter. That way, at least it will tell you what document to look at to find this information.
Yeah, but so if I sent to Wendy like a draft pro forma, what I'm thinking of, and then we could pass it around the group and see what everybody thinks. I could do that if that's okay.
No, I think that would work, and we can build upon it.
Yeah, okay, that was my point.
Okay, anyone else have planning commission remarks?
I just have 2 comments. I do agree with Neil, because I think the reports that we're getting right now are great, a lot more in detail than what we've ever have. But the outstanding concerns and conditions, like I've said before, it's good to close the loop, put them on the side, and only have to pay attention to the ones that are eminent or unresolved. It's not necessary to keep going back over a lot of the same information. My suggestion would be, instead of your report, maybe you could move the outstanding issues up to the front of the report, and we concentrate on those and resolve those. And hopefully we're not going to have any more big ones like this. Or maybe one more.
The only challenge with that has been with the PUDs so far. Sometimes the planning commission discusses some items, but I don't know where they landed on with regards to a recommendation to the applicant. But I'll do my best to summarize my understanding, and you can correct it if I misunderstood any conclusion.
Yeah, I'm thinking of just a fairly simple document. You know, here's an issue description, date it was open, current date of a status, and who's responsible. Something really simple like that, Shri.
Okay. Bill, did you say you had one other thing?
One other issue is when we
yeah,
were
Joe.
going through the last meeting with Kensington Ridge and the public hearing, I did not get a copy of the notification within 1,000 feet as to who was notified. So we usually would get part of our packet, an address of people who was in fact notified. I don't know if I wasn't around, so I didn't know if anybody else received that or if that was something that was missed.
That was missed, and I have that on my desk in the file.
Just good to have, because sometimes you'll get into a public hearing, not so much virtually, but someone will say, I did not get noticed.
Right.
And then you have that. And it's good to know who was noticed and who talked. That's all I got.
Okay. Any other planning commissioners have any remarks before we adjourn?
Just a quick thing is, I think Mark and I sat through the last 2 days, it was a 4-hour thing from the Michigan Association of Planners. And it was for us new guys. And it was, there was nothing, that stood out. They did provide us with a book. It was, Planning and Zoning Essentials, about a 100-page booklet that kind of made some sense and tied things together for those of us who are relatively new. And it was, and like I said, nothing was shocking, but it was a good 2 days spent to at least, tie some terminology and verbiages and things like that together. So that was pretty good. And last thing, good job tonight, Julie.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thanks. Anyone else have any comments before we adjourn? Okay, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So
I move we adjourn.
Okay, that's Neil and then Vaughn second.
Yep.
You don't need a roll call.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you all.
Good night,
Good night.
everybody.
Good
Good
night.
Thank you,
Night.
everyone.
Right.
Thank you,
Thanks for your
Brian.
help, Wendy.
Sure. Have a great night.
You too.